Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. We are headed into the final segment of the day, which will be deciding all NBA teams with 1 month remaining until the playoffs. The playoffs will be kicking off April 20th, so we are just outside 1 month until then, and we're going to be selecting the all NBA teams 1, 2, and 3 in the segment. Now keep in mind there is still a few weeks left in this, and especially for some of those third team selections, I think there's a lot of players that could potentially get hot and find their way into that category. But we're going to maybe be doing a little bit of projecting, but ultimately deciding on the players as things stand today. A couple things to keep in mind is we have some new rules with the All-NBA teams where it is not position based. You can pick any 5 players for the first team, and additionally, this is the first season with the 65 game minimum in terms of games played to be eligible. So that obviously means no Joel Embiid. That means no Tyrese Halliburton, no Jimmy Butler, and no Donovan Mitchell are sort of the big names that are not going to be making this list because of injuries, unfortunately. I still haven't made my final decision, I feel like, in terms of whether or not the 65 game rule should be allowed. I think the idea of it makes a lot of sense because the NBA that has struggled so much with load management the past handful of seasons, they need to be able to sell themselves to networks that their product is worth investing into. So that part adds up to me, but I definitely think things can be tweaked. You have to play at least 20 minutes for the game to actually count, which is maybe a little bit ridiculous in my eyes. Again, we're not going to do this whole debate right now, though. But getting into the first team, I think that there are 4 locks for this. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Luka Doncic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Nikola Jokic. SGA, Giannis, and Jokic are all having tremendous individual statistical seasons, putting up great stats, and their teams are top 2 in their respective conferences. I do think that this is no-brainer. Jokic seems like he's running away with the MVP award, but if you were to take him out of it, Giannis, SGA would also be right in the mix as well. I don't really have much hesitation at all in terms of them making it. Luka, I think, is a lock as well. The Mavs aren't having the same level of team success. They're hovering around the play-in tournament. They are currently 7th in the Western Conference at the time of recording this, but he has crazier individual stats than anybody else in the NBA, leading the league in scoring at 34.4 points per game. That is the highest in any given season since James Harden in 2019-20. And I went back to sort of look at that season as well for Harden. Luka is shooting with better efficiency on an increased volume as well from Harden, where he is this year shooting on 49-38 shooting splits, 23.7, which is ridiculous in its own. 23.7 attempts from the field, 10.4 attempts from 3. Harden, 44-36 splits in 19-20 on 22.3 and then 12.4 attempts per game from 3. So did shoot more 3s, but the shots overall go to Luka in this scenario. Luka, just as a note, also increased his 3-point attempts by over 2 per game and has still raised his percentage by a few points to be at a career high 38, which is pretty crazy. He's also averaging a career high in assists at 9.7, which is 3rd in the league, grabbing 9 rebounds per game as well. I do just want to say, I have made this argument on the show before, where as great as Luka's individual season is, I just don't think that he has a case for MVP. People look at these stats and say, well, what else can he do to win the MVP award? Not that it's all on him, but he can be on a team that wins more games. I think that especially now that we have this threshold of the play-in tournament, it is really hard for me to justify that a player who could technically not even make the playoffs, I do expect them to continue to win games. I've been on the record as well saying I really enjoy watching this Mavericks team, but first team All-NBA is a no-brainer to me as long as things don't go terribly wrong with the Mavericks, and I think it's very well deserved. I believe he was first team last year as well, and that was with the Mavericks missing the playoffs, so even that probably would not be able to derail him from making first team All-NBA, as I am running a quick check, and yes, he was All-NBA first team last year with the Mavs' bad season. So, a lock, as I was saying. Now, there are a few options left for that final first team spot between Jason Tatum, Kevin Durant, and Kawhi Leonard. Now, if you look at the three of these players, obviously three of the top forwards in the NBA, the Suns have been staggering, which hurts Kevin Durant because he has some of the best statistics out of this group. They are currently the 8th seed in the Western Conference. Durant himself has had a pretty rough week where he scored 20 or less points in the past 3 games. They got dismantled by the Celtics on primetime. They got dismantled by the Bucks, which was maybe an even worse loss, even though their offense actually showed up to that one. But Durant was not very good scoring-wise in that game either. His numbers as a whole, though, on the season obviously gets a little bit of extra attention as we come down the stretch of the regular season. But KD still has great numbers as a whole, just under 28 points per game, leads all three of these players in scoring. Kawhi has actually been better in terms of efficiency, just slightly, but he's having one of his best, if not the best, offensive seasons of his career. That has been a pleasure to watch. We're actually seeing him play games, and he's doing so in a really fun and great way. He is behind the other two, though, in terms of rebounds per game and assists per game. All three of these players, I think, don't get enough credit. Kawhi I wouldn't say he doesn't get enough credit for his defense. Kevin Durant and Jason Tatum, I both think don't get enough credit for their defense. Kawhi is still a good defender, but he also has a little bit, if you haven't been fully in tuned to the Clippers, you might feel like he should be better because of his former Defensive Player of the Year awards, but he's still fine on the defensive end, and I don't want to take away from him for that. But my pick as of today would be Jason Tatum. He is the best player on significantly, at least regular season, the best team. They are on pace, the Celtics are, to win 65 games. He's averaging 27 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists. What could hurt Tatum in this conversation, though, is the fact that the Celtics are 10 games ahead of the 2-seeded Bucks. They're basically locked into the 1 seed, and there won't be a real need for their stars to play down the stretch of the season. There are maybe 4 or 5 games that I personally really want to see from a competition standpoint, see the Celtics play in. They play the Bucks on Wednesday night. That they should all be present for, in my opinion. Maybe the Pelicans game at the end of the month, because the Pelicans are sort of a different team. They're very physical, and they're really coming along as of late. Definitely versus the Thunder on April 3rd, and at least one of the Bucks or Knicks games in the final week of the regular season. Probably more so the Bucks, but again, it's not the end of the world either, because they don't need any of these regular season games, and Tatum is just short already as it stands of being the 65 game eligible, where I also don't think that's going to be a problem for him whatsoever. He's played 64 games already. This is someone who has always sort of argued with the front office a little bit in terms of making sure that he does take rest when they need to. Again, I think if we're picking now, it's Tatum, but that is something I'm looking for in terms of this debate moving forward. So that's Shea, Luka, Tatum, Giannis, and Jokic on the first team. That leaves Durant and Kawhi on the second team. Who joins them? I think that Jalen Brunson has to be on it. Averaging 27 and 6, has carried a huge load offensively, especially in crunch time situations. The Knicks have been dealing with injuries and roster changes through the season. It was Randall going down first. He's going to miss just about half the season as a whole now. They trade for OG Anunoby, who goes down almost immediately. Came back briefly and is now hurt again. Missed the game last night. So for Brunson, no question to me, should be on one of these teams. I would argue that he should be second. Other candidates here, as we now have 2 spots left alongside Durant, Kawhi, and Brunson. Anthony Edwards, Anthony Davis, Devin Booker, and LeBron all sort of possibly can work their way into this spot. I would vote for Anthony Edwards in this situation, where he's had an incredible season and he's only stepped it up since Karl Anthony Towns went down with the meniscus injury. He's played 6 games without Towns since then. He's averaging 31 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists in those games. They're 4-2, including scoring 37 points in a 20-point comeback against the Clippers. Now, Kawhi left after the first quarter in that game, so do with that what you will, but still an incredibly impressive performance in my eyes on primetime as well there. They are currently a 47-win team, are half a game back from the Thunder, who are the 1 seed. So with the team success, with how well he's been able to play on the season as a whole, and especially take his game to the next level without the presence of the other all-star on the team, I give the nod to Anthony Edwards. And then for the final spot, I lean one of the 2 Lakers, and it's tough here. I would probably, to give myself almost a little bit of a cop-out, I know that the positionless ballots here are a new thing this year, but just for the sake of giving myself almost a little bit of an out, I'm sorry. I'm doing it because it's a really hard pick between Anthony Davis and LeBron here. I would go with AD. I think that LeBron probably has to be on one of these teams as a whole. Now, the only knock, really, I feel like, in terms of having both of these players is the team success, which, to be fair, is a pretty valid argument. But I just think that with the other competitors really for this, I have a really hard time knocking both of them out. The Lakers are 37 and 32, which is the 9 seed in the Western Conference. Seems like they're probably going to be stuck in that position, 2.5 games back of the Phoenix Suns. So I don't know, maybe there's a chance that Devin Booker could be on this second team as well, but he's missed a handful of games. I think it should be fine for him in terms of being able to make the 65 game threshold. He's currently at 54, which means that he's going to have to play out the rest of the year for the most part. Also, just because of All-NBA aside, the Suns are going to need it with the way that the season currently is, where they're at the 8th seed, but there are 14 games left for the Suns this season. He needs to play in 11 more to make it, so that is going to be a little bit of a down the stretch situation there. We'll see how that works, but assuming he does reach that, I would have Devin Booker and LeBron James both on the 3rd team. From there, I think it is pretty difficult because you have a lot of people that are sort of in the same realm. A name that I really think is coming along as of late is Zion, where we've seen these point Zion minutes and we've seen the way that he's been looking to dominate a lot more down the stretch. Now, statistically, I don't know if it's going to reach the heights it needs to, but if you look at his play of late and the way that the Pelicans as a whole are really shaping into a potentially more dangerous playoff team, currently sit at the 5 seed. I know that the Clippers don't want to play them in that 4-5 matchup. The physicality that the Pelicans have would be pretty scary there. I do think I'm going to have to snub Zion on this one, but he was in the realm of consideration for me. I think from here, we have 3 spots left available next to Booker and LeBron. I'm going to go with Bam Adebayo, and I know that some of his statistical arguments aren't really necessarily there, but I do think that he is just so huge for them. I know it can be a little bit overstated at times, but the playing 1 through 5 on defense, I just think he's so valuable on the defensive side of the ball. Plus, we're seeing him play a good brand of offense as well. I also think I'm going to double down on the bigs with Domantas Sabonis. Again, these third-team selections, it's really tough with the number of guys that are in this realm. But Sabonis, I mean, his statistical season is actually just stupid, leading the league in rebounds per game. He is scoring just under 20 at, it is now officially 20 points per game, 13.7 rebounds per game, and 8.3 assists. So I'm going to add him to the team as well. And then finally, I think I'm going to have to go with Jaylen Brown in this one. And again, keep in mind there is time for some of these to change as we enter the final stretch of the regular season. But Jaylen Brown, it's not that the advanced statistics are probably going to argue very highly for it, but he's been playing like the best Celtic for the past handful of weeks. Again, 65 win pace. I'm going with my gut here, and I'm going with Jaylen Brown here. I promise you it's not a biased thing. It is more so about the team's success and how good he's been playing as of late. He looks like he could really be on one for when the playoffs come around in a month. But that is all we have time for today. I guess before we go, just a quick recap here. It's Shea, Luka, Tatum, Giannis, and Jokic on the first team. Second team is Durant, Kawhi, Brunson, Anthony Davis, and the last one that we had, I'm sorry, I'm getting lost here for a second. And last one is Anthony Edwards. Third team, we have Booker, LeBron, Bam, Sabonis, and Jaylen Brown. But that is all we have time for today. Thank you very much for tuning in to the GSMC Sports Podcast. Thank you to the GSMC Sports Network for allowing us to host this show. We will be back as always 2 o'clock tomorrow. So be sure to like, subscribe, and tune in with us tomorrow. We will see you then.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet. Damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go.